Hello friends, Jov here. Welcome to another episode of the TDD Screencast. By now we are able to validate the credentials before creating an account, and the goal of this video is to actually start working and perhaps finish the creation of the accounts. So let's see how that's gonna go. So as we have written here, we have a plan to have a way to create an account and also take in consideration like the failure cases when we are, for example, offline or where the backend is off or something. And then also here, basically, I have a duplicate account, and probably that's part of the creation of the account, so we can take that in consideration as well. So let's see how that's gonna go. We can start off by writing a new test, and I'm gonna call this create an account test. So our first test can be something like what happens when we have an account created. So it's maybe what happens when I have an account created. So the assertion is gonna be something like I would expect a sign up state signed up, and then I would expect as part of the signed up a user that comes back. So let's name this, for example, I don't know, Maya, and that's gonna be my view model sign up state value. Let's maybe import this assertion here and make this slightly smaller so that we can see entirely the line. And that's gonna happen as a result of the following act. Basically, we make a call to create an account, and there we have to pass an email, which is gonna be, let's say, maya@friends.com, and then some password, and the password has to include special character. So let's maybe this, and I don't know, something like that. And then we also have to pass an about, something like this. Now let's make this compile. So our view model is gonna be a SignUpViewModel, and there we're gonna pass a regex credential validator. So now we have slightly better situation, and now let's go ahead and create this this Maya argument there. So as I said, it's gonna be some sort of a user, and the user at this point, I have not much idea about what the user is gonna be like. So we can start with something simple. Let's say it's gonna have an ID, and perhaps for Maya we can come up with something like, I don't know. These are the things that most probably, I mean, not most probably, but definitely will come back from the server. So we make a call for given credentials like the email, the password, and the about, and we give that to the backend, and the backend is responsible for actually creating this ID for the user and stuff like that. So most probably that's going to be a UUID, but it's not that relevant at this point for this test. So I'm just gonna come up with something. Then part of the user is gonna be the email itself, this one. So and the about. So that's gonna be the part of the user. Maybe the user is gonna have more properties as we go, but for now I think that's gonna be enough. So let's extract to separate file. I'm gonna put that in my domain user, and let's move it on the other side. So my user is going to be a data class let's put the parameters in another line, in new lines. So the first one's gonna be ID, that's gonna be string. Also an email, that's also gonna be string, and finally the about. So those are the three things that are more than enough to get started. And that's gonna be our user, which is part of the given. And then let's create the signed up state in the sign up state. So that's gonna be user. And this is also going to be a data class, but it has to derive from the sign up state too. And now my test looks complete and compiled. So let's run the tests and see where we are. And it fails. So it fails because we are expecting something, but it is null. So let's get it to work. And basically what we are missing here is we are missing a remaining branches. And that's the last branch. What happens when we have a valid credentials? So the easiest thing that I could do to make this work is basically say that the mutable state value is gonna be signed up, and there I'm gonna just pass a user, and this user is basically this one. So I can go ahead and copy paste that one, but normally I don't prefer to copy paste. I mean, if you're doing this alone, you can go ahead and try that, but normally I want to type everything again, just because it gives me some sort of more sense about the code, maybe some things that are not obvious from seeing, and when I have to type them, many times I find like things that I might want to change or that kind of thing. So that's why I prefer always to, and that there are situations when I can find some problems along, like when I'm just retyping everything. So as I said, that's gonna be a user. Let's import that one. So it's gonna be my ID. Maya at friends.com and about Maya. So let's run and see. Okay, now we have the problem with the looper. Basically, we have to here extend with the instant task execution executor extension. And let's run now. Now the test passes. And that's cool. So since we have a passing test, let's go ahead. Yeah, first here what happened before is that I have updated to beta 3 of the Compose version, and the build plugin also to alpha 12. That was an update that I've done before starting to record. So that's one commit. And then this is our first commit for now. So let's name this can create an account with hard-coded data. So here we have a little, I think we can eliminate this duplication here. Basically, we can read the email from the actual user. And that should still pass. And here we can say remove duplication. Cool. So now we have a way to create an account. And then what's the next step? So basically, for given another arguments, I'll have to be able to create different user, right? So basically, I have to start triangulating now. So let's go ahead and create another test. And it's gonna be something like I don't know, another account created. And now I would say sign up state signed up, and there I'm gonna have, let's say, Bob, and that's gonna be my view model sign up state value. That happens when I do view model dot create account, and here I'll pass Bob, email, and then the password. The password is gonna be, let's say, yeah. So many of the viewers of the videos are actually not actual subscribers. So let's maybe try to improve that. If you find this content cool, please subscribe. And I'll need a number there as well. And that's gonna be Bob about. And let's make this compile. So we're gonna have again the sign up view model, regex credentials validator. And here I'm just gonna create a user that's gonna be bob at friends.com. Then well, that's gonna be my email. The ID is bob ID, let's say. And then here I'm gonna have about Bob. Right? Cool. So now we are having a failing test, and it says that we are expecting Bob, but we get back Maya. So how do we fix this? Basically, we can do if the email contains Bob, then do the new thing, which is gonna be again, the value is gonna be signed up user, and the user is gonna be user Bob ID Bob at friends.com about Bob. Else do the old thing. And now if I run the tests, it should pass. And it does. So let's check that in. And now we can say that can create different account. Well, can create 2 different accounts with hard-coded data. I like to articulate that hard-coded data there, so that when I see the history of the commits, I'll take a look and see what actually happened and how I was progressing through. That's cool. So now let's do a little bit of refactoring. Basically, we can start removing this duplication between the tests and the production code. So all these Bob, whatever that comes, basically is the email is something that comes in the create account function, also the about. And we can start by removing such duplication. So for example, I can say here instead the email, and if I run the test, it should still work. And the same I can do here. The about that comes from the function, and that works as well. Now I have more confidence to actually do in one step. Here replace the email with email and about with about, and that works. So I think the last thing that that I have to fix is basically the difference between these two is in the ID. So I think I can just pull out the ID, the creation of the ID. So the ID is something like the email, take while it's not an at. So it's gonna take all the characters until the at, and it would add an ID at the end. So basically that's gonna be my Let's name this user ID. And now if I replace here the user ID, it should still work. And it does. And I can do the same here. And it does. So what I've done essentially is like I made the similar things to look more similar. So I evolved a little bit the algorithm by sort of replacing the data that comes from the tests. So let's maybe check this in and say made the similar things look more similar. And now what I can do is I can eliminate this if else basically. If I just pull out this and run, it should work. And if I remove this conditional here, oops, everything should still work. And it does. So what we can do here, I can say removed logical duplication. And now what we can do, actually, we can go back to the UI and make the UI test pass, because now basically we can create an account for a given argument. So it's gonna return back an account, and basically we can get in the app. But I think that's gonna be too much of a shifting, and I would prefer to do a little bit more of this work. So basically the create of account is good, but I would like to also do the account duplication as well. So what happens when we try to create account with like create the same account twice, call it with the same email. And so let's see how that's gonna go. Create duplicate account. So what happens when I create duplicate account? Create, yeah, I think it's create an account test. Yeah, so it's like we cannot create a duplicate account, so it should end up into an error. So that's why I'm not calling this duplicate account created, because it's not going to be created. So yeah, something like sign up state duplicate account. That's going to be my view model sign up state value. Oops, so this should be part of the sign up state duplicate account, and that's gonna be sign up state derivative. And yeah, let's create this as a sign up view model regex credentials validator, and I should call view model create account. So I'm gonna do something like I don't know, Anna email, then some something like this, and the about. Let's create Anna. That's gonna be a user that will have an ID Anna at friends.com about Anna. But also part of the given here should be that I should have an account with such an email. Basically, that's part of the, I want to articulate that, I want to express that in the test. So when I read the test, I have to see that actually there was an account with such an email. And then when I try to create an account using the same email, it gives me an error. So something like, let's say also, because now the only way to create another account, to make an account part of the whole thing, is like to again call the create account. So basically create account twice, but this is part of the given. So I can just pass the same things there. An email, then the password. I'm thinking to extract that, and then an about. Now let's extract this here. So I'm basically calling twice, but this makes it sort of, this also here makes it explicit that that's part of the given. So now I have this test. I think it reads good. So we have a user and a password, and we have a view model that already should contain, should have an account there. And then when I try to create, it should give me a duplicate account error. So let's run and watch it fail. So yeah, it fails for the right reason, right? So we have expected duplicate account, but the actual is a user. So the fastest thing to make this to actually make this pass is to again come up with an if here and say that if the email contains Anna, we can do a duplicate. Otherwise, do the old thing and everything should work. Cool. And now let's check that in. And I'm gonna say can detect a duplicate account. Cool. So now let's maybe focus a little bit more on the on this side, on the try to refactor now this, because like the only way to right now to detect if an account is a duplicate is by this if here. And I can sense here, like instead of now going and triangulating again and again for duplication of accounts, I see that actually here I have to sort of come up with some mechanism that will be hosting my my users, and then sort of the accounts that are created, and then I should be able to use that sort of collection to query and see if there are users with emails like that. So so I'm thinking that I can host that, like for example, into a collection, like let's say a map of a string is gonna be my password. So I'm gonna host them, like for password I'm gonna keep a user, because I'm returning back sort of the users and the users as a whole object, and then I also have a password there, so I'm just gonna, for a password, keep user. And actually there might be more than one users that are gonna have the same password, so maybe have a list also. So mutable list of user. So let's actually extract this, because if I come up with this collection on each call, I want it's not gonna be a success because it will create new collection on each time. But what I want to do is like I would create here a user and host it there. So basically this has to be a property of the class. So let's maybe do that, and I'm gonna name it oops, yeah, so Kotlin is not allowing me to do that, so let's maybe do this first. And what about now? Yes. So here what how can I name this is basically I can say users for password. And actually, because I think I'll have to do some more refactoring here, let's make that the test site smaller. We are not gonna be reading that. So the tests are still passing because nothing actually changed. And this one here doesn't make sense because I have a property here, and I'm gonna work with that property. So what I can do here is I can users for password. So for the given there is a function that actually I can do get or put. Yes. So what this function does is, because I'm hosting the key is a string, the password, the default value should be, this allows me to define a default value that if in the map, in the map collection, if there is no value for the given key, then I can define something that it will be returned by default. So for example, an empty list. If there is no users for that password, like none, then I can create a list for that. So something like mutable list. And then once I get that list of users for that password, I can just add the user that I just created. So that should not affect the tests at all. And what I can do next here is I can do users for password for a given password. So that should return me a list of users. But because by default the value is nullable, there is an extension that I can use here, or empty. So it will return a non-null list. And now I have a list of users for that password. I can say if there is any that email equals to the email that comes in the function. So that's gonna be that's how I can detect if I already have a user with that email. So what can I do is I can extract a variable here, and I can say is known, and that should be of no consequence. And now I can here replace the is known, and that should still work. But I'm thinking now that actually here I'm getting the users for a given password back from the collection. But what if, for example, I have a user with an email but different password? So basically I should not be taking this. What I should do is instead do users for password values, and then flatten, and that's gonna, so what I'm gonna do is for all the lists of users, regardless of the password, it's just gonna make one array of users, and then it will check if there is any that matches. So let's see if that works. Yeah, it works. So that's cool. And what I can do right now is I can check the scene. And how to name this would be can detect, no, maybe can introduced a way to introduced a collection to keep the created accounts, created users. Okay. Nice. So now there are a bunch of things going on here that I would like to keep refactoring. So basically, first, one thing is that I want to extract some functions, because there is lots of different levels of abstraction working on here. So basically, this working with the users for password, which is sort of a primitive type, a collection, a map. I'm using that. I'm working with that, but then also I am messing with mutable signup state, which is the live data, and then also like creation of users and that kind of thing. So let's maybe start extracting some functions. So basically this one here can be let's say create user, and I think these ones I would like to move the password, email password, and about, and that should still work. Let's check that in, and I'll say extracted function to create users. And now so basically what I'm doing here, this create function is sort of create user is a command function. So I say make a user with these arguments and then give me back the user. So I think this check of whether there is an account or not in the collection should be part of sort of I'm seeing as part of like this function. So when I call this function, there is a command like create a user, and it should give me back either a user or say like, okay, I cannot create an account because of whatever reason it is. So I'm also thinking that if this was a backend, for example, if this was a backend call, I send there the arguments, and the backend can say like, okay, 200, or it can say no, there is some problem. So basically, that's a sort of logical unit that belongs together. So I also want to group that together. And as we can, as another argument is that if I take a look here, this is known is basically messing directly with the collection, and here we're also working with a collection. So what I can do here is I can say, let me just copy paste this here. I can say if user for password values flatten, and then if there is any where the email matches, I can say throw a duplicate account exception. So what I'm doing here is basically I'm modeling a way to give back a result different than the user. So one way to go is by throwing an exception that's going to be part of my domain exception, which is sort of a domain model, domain type that I'm gonna use. Another way is to wrap this user into sort of another, let's say, sealed class that will be part as like either I'm gonna have sort of a monad, either like either user or a failure. So there are a variety of options. I am sort of okay to work with exceptions. So I think that's the way that I'm gonna take right now. For an exercise, you can take different way and then see how it goes. So it's gonna be cool to get some feedback on that and see how that's gonna go on your side. So let's create this class. I'm gonna create it right here. And now this change should be of no consequence because there is a check on top as well. Let's check that in. Introduced a way to to react on way to let's maybe name this introduced an exception to define to as an answer of unable as an answer to unable to duplicate account creation. Introduce an exception as an answer to duplicate account creation. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay. So what we can do next is here we can eliminate this is known, and how we can do that step by step is by first maybe we can invert this, and that should still work. And because there is no direct way to do a replacement, what I can do is I can copy this, paste it here, and then so the idea is that like make a duplication, make sure it works, and then delete the old thing. So here we can do try and then catch, and the exception is gonna be duplicate count, and now I think I can remove this, and if I run, let's see if that works. It does. And now I can remove this thing here, and it works again. So let's check that in. What happened here is yeah, remove, replace a conditional with a try catch block. Cool. And now I want to also pull out this, as I said previously, I want to pull out this outside of the try catch. So what can I do is again I can do result is a try catch, and then here this try catch is gonna return to me the state, and then I'll just set the state. I'll just set the state to my live data, and then let's see if that works. It does. And what I can do is basically I can extract a function out of this one, so I can sort of align the levels of abstraction once again. So I can say sign up for this one, and maybe I can even inline and remove this thing from here, and now it reads sort of better, And I think now I have inlined or sort of aligned the levels of abstraction here that that are sort of operating in that function. So that's cool. And then I have a sign up that takes email, password, and about. And let's convert this to a blog body. And now what this function does is basically a try, and then it asks for creating a user. So it's a command, and if there is an exception, then it's gonna handle the exception and make return back the whatever we are having as a result. In this case, we're only catching the duplicate, so that's fine. And down there, as a like low level, we have this create user. That's cool. Let's check in what we have. So basically what we've done here is extracted a function to perform the sign up. And now let's group them together, basically into separate classes. So this one would become, because it directly operates on a collection, which is sort of a primitive, and this sort of collection. Here we have, for example, creation of users, creation of ID, and then directly working with this sort of low-level, as I said, collection. So what we can do, basically, we can extract a bunch of functions. For example, here we can say check account exists for the email. Then we can create a function for this one to say create user ID for email, and then create the actual user. And this one's also is gonna be let's run the tests and make sure everything works, because I did 2 steps without running the tests. That's not okay, but I sort of feel a little pressure because I'm running a bit too long. So let's make this one a function as well. So that's gonna be save user, and then it takes password and user. Okay, that's fine. Let's run. So it works. So now this function, the create user, reads, I mean, it's sort of more aligned. It's sort of better. So we have a validation, which will throw an exception if there is an account, if an account with email check account exists with that email. And then we create an ID based on the email, then we create the actual user, we save it, and then we return it. So that's good. And then all of these other small functions are sort of, let's convert this to blog body. Yeah, so they're sort of fine, small little functions. Everything works. Let's make sure we are checked in. So what I can do is extracted little functions for to separate different responsibilities. Cool, and now let's group them. So for example, this creation of the user belongs to a separate type. Let's call this a in-memory users, or user, maybe user catalog. I don't know how to name it, but it's sort of a collection of users, so it's sort of a catalog. And what it does, it manages the user. So basically we are operating here on a users for password, which is a primitive, and the primitive doesn't have anything to do with users or with passwords or with whatever types we are using. So basically you want to wrap that in a type of itself. So one way to go is I'll just copy this and paste it inside. Then make this as part of the constructor. And then the only public function would be the create user. So let's see. Maybe make this a little bit more. Yeah. So yeah, it's sort of long type here, but I don't know, like that's the way it is. So we have this in-memory user catalog, and now everything should still work because it does not change any of the code that was there before. And the only public method, as I said, is the create user. So what we can do right now is we can create here a, not here, but basically here we can create a users catalog, and that's gonna be in memory user catalog instance, and that should still work. And here, instead of calling the function that we have locally, we can do the user catalog and then call the user, and that should still work. Great. Let's check that in and say emerged a class to deal to manage users or accounts. Well, no. To manage, let's reword that, to manage users, because there is no account here in the names, so it wouldn't reflect. So basically we're working with users. Let's stick to that. That's good. And now what I can do, basically there is some unused code here, because this create user function that we used to have is no longer used, and then all these other functions are becoming unused, and also this collection. And now what we have class for the exception and class for the for managing the users, and that should still work, and it does. So let's check that in, and I'll say here removed unused code. Now let's do the same basically for the sign up. So it belongs to sort of, I want to have a middle layer that the view model talks to that middle layer, and that middle layer talks to this in-memory user catalog. So the in-memory user catalog is gonna be my fake for the tests, and then I'm gonna emerge as I go. I'm thinking to emerge an implementation of the user catalog that will be talking to, let's say, my backend later on. But for now, I just have this fake. That's fine. That's my boundary. And this middle level will be the responsibility of this middle level would be to actually call this backend or the in-memory user catalog or whatever we are gonna inject there, and handle the different sort of map the different things. If there is an error, it should map into sort of a state. If there is, let's say, if the backend would return to me different types of entity, then maybe the responsibility to map that's gonna be there. We'll see how it goes. At this moment, I know that I'm gonna have this middle layer, but I don't know what's gonna be all the responsibility that it should have one responsibility, but sort of what's that responsibility. So we have to see if it's gonna be only the mapping or not, or maybe just it's gonna have collaborator that does something else. So let's figure out. But for now, I'm just gonna name that as a user repository, and I'm gonna copy and paste And that should be of no consequence. It doesn't touch the existing code, so it works. And now I can make this, let's first make it private and then move to constructor. So there will be no default value here, and let's do some formatting. And then this function is going to be public. And that should still work. And now what I can do is I can again create a private user repository, which is going to be my user repository, and I'm going to pass there a in-memory user catalog. That should still work because I'm not using that. And what I can do now is here, instead of calling the signup, I can do the user repository signup, and that should work. And it does. Great. So you merged a class to delegate user creation and handle and translate. So delegate user creation and translate errors. I don't know, something like that. Cool. And now what I can do, I can remove this function because it's no longer used, as well as this property here. And now we have three classes here: user repository, in-memory user catalog, and the exception down there. Cool. And now what we can do, we can extract them into separate files out from here. So let's do that maybe quickly and see. So my exception is going to be in my domain exceptions. Cool. I was checking for typo. Now, next I can extract this in-memory user catalog as well. So that's gonna be my domain user. As I said, this is sort of a fake, and that's fine. I want that to be part of my production code because I can use this one for my UI tests, for example, and like I can basically run my application using the in-memory implementation. I don't really need to make calls or stuff like that. And furthermore, I'll reuse this fake in order to make the contract, to emerge a contract between what's in memory and what's real implementation, like what's an implementation to make calls to backend or to database or to that kind of thing, that kind of things. So yeah. But that's gonna be somewhere else in another episode, definitely not in this one. And finally, let's move this one also into domain user. Cool. And now everything should still work. Let's check that in. Oh. I've made too big of steps. So basically, I should have make different steps here. So that's a pity. So I wanted to make one commit for like deleting the code, and another for so let's maybe do that like this. Yeah. So I'll say removed unused code. Here. And then here, what I have done is I have extracted classes into standalone files. Cool. Let's see what we got now. So we have the user repository. Let's see if the tests are still working. Yeah. So we have the user repository. We have in-memory user catalog, and we have everything is there. Only in the view model, what I want to do is to make this as part of the constructor. So basically, let's extract. That's gonna be the last thing before we go off, because we're running really too long. I think already 50 or more minutes. So that's gonna be part of my constructor. So let's name this user repository. Let's move that to constructor actually. But what happened actually now with this refactoring is it automatically updated my tests. It's pity that Android Studio in the latest updates is not importing for some reason the types, but I think that's pity. But I believe they're gonna fix it. But basically what I just have to do is just do the imports, and then my tests will still work. And they do. So let's check that in and say inject the user repository into the SignUpViewModel. Into the SignUpViewModel, and then let's use the actual names. User repository. All right, my tests are still working, but in here actually I can cross this. We're gonna work on fail creating account, like handling the errors in the next episode. But here what I wanted to do as last thing is to let's remove a little bit of this duplication here. So basically I can extract this into SignUpViewModel. No, I want that to be called ViewModel. So I have ViewModel is SignUpViewModel, and then that's it. And that's my view model, which is the default one. So I can remove this here, and that should work. And now I can do the same in this test. Great. And then here, what I can do is basically I have a mutable map of password to mutable list of Anna, and that's my users for passwords. Users for password. Yeah. And then I can do a user repository in memory user catalog, and there I'll pass the users for password. So basically this thing here, users for password, is what I'm having here. I'm trying to replace this call. And now here, what I can do is instead use the, I'm gonna extract this to variable and then use the user repository. Come on. That should still work. And what I can do here is I can remove this call now. And I think let's extract here as well this into a extract it into here inside. The credentials validator is fine. And now here we have a credentials validator user repository, and let's maybe move them into put arguments in one line. Now it reads better. So what we have here is we have Anna and a password. We have users for password out of that, and we have a repository that actually includes the users for password, which tells that in the repository exists already an account for such an email. And then when we try to create, we expect a duplicate. And that works. So that's sort of the refactoring of the test. Should have been done in 2 steps. One, remove the duplication, and other to actually improve the last test to make that explicit. But yeah, I think that's okay because I'm really under pressure because of the time. So what I can do here is I can say removed duplication in tests. Okay, cool. And now we have already 20 commits basically. So let's maybe push that, and that's gonna be the last step we do for this episode. And what we ended up with, we are gonna work on failing the creation of the account for the next episode. So I think that's enough for this one. The key point here is that in this episode we saw how easy we can keep refactoring once we have the tests in place. So that's why in test-driven development, the first thing to do is like make the test green as soon as possible. Once we have that behavior covered with a test, we have a confidence in refactoring, so we can refactor as much as we want. So we have proven that in this episode. I really hope that you find this episode as well as the other episodes fun, interesting, and maybe you've learned something new. So yeah, I'm gonna catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for the time and the attention, and yeah, stay safe.